Jesus himself said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in yourselves. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so he who eats me, he also shall live because of me. This is the bread which came down out of heaven, not as the fathers ate and died. He who eats this bread shall live forever." Now we know we're not cannibals, and we're not going to eat his flesh and drink his blood literally, but this is a metaphor. He is the bread of life that came down from heaven. We must pay attention to every word that he speaks, or we will perish. You must consume these words and abide in them. Now, Paul also writes, which is my favorite verses, to test ourselves to see if we are in the faith, to prove to ourselves that Christ is in us. Unless indeed we fail the test, or we are reprobates. But then he says, I trust that you will realize that we ourselves do not fail the test. If you have consumed all of these words, and you abide in them, and they abide in you, then you know what this test is. This is what you should be asking every preacher, teacher, prophet, and prophetess, what this test is that proves that Christ is in them. Now, we're instructed in the scriptures to test every spirit to see whether or not they are from God, because Jesus told us the Pharisees and the scribes had placed themselves in Moses' seat. And he said that unless our righteousness exceeds their righteousness, we will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. So it's important that we understand and know who we are listening to. Jesus speaks of these individuals. He said, they have no root in themselves, but are only temporary. And when affliction or persecution arises because of the word, immediately they become offended. Immediately they get upset and they lash out because you're testing them beyond their knowledge, because they have no business doing what they're doing. Ask them what the test is that proves that Christ is in them and that they are in the correct faith. And watch what happens. I've been on many channels, and I've asked many false teachers, preachers, prophets, and prophetesses these questions. And every single one of them has told me that I'm not of God, that I have no love in me, and that I'm spreading division. But Jesus told us that he did not come to bring peace, but a sword. He came to bring division, to separate the true believers from those who are making a claim to something they're not. Paul also says, what he was doing, he will continue to do, that he may cut off opportunity from those who desire an opportunity to be regarded just as we are in the matter about which they are boasting. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workers, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Wolves in sheep's clothing. Outwardly they appear holy and righteous, but inwardly they're ravenous wolves. And when you test them beyond their knowledge, as I said, you will drag all this to the surface. Therefore, it is not surprising if Satan's servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their deeds. Your righteousness must exceed their righteousness if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven. And that means consuming all these words from the beginning to the end, from the end to the beginning, line on line, precept upon precept.